Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Danni and today we're going to be going through my most recent horror reads. So with Halloween fast and approaching, I wanted to give you guys a list of books that you can choose from to pick up in this spooky season. If you guys haven't already started, I'm sure that most of you have. I was actually really surprised with how many books I had on this list. I didn't think that I had read as many horror/thrillers as I have in the past several months. I'm excited to give you guys some recommendations. I'm also excited to talk about some books I didn't like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the lowest rated and go to the highest rated. Let's get started. The lowest rated book on this list is Wild Spaces, which if you guys saw my reading vlog for this book, you probably have already guessed that this was going to be on my low end. This is a 1-star read for me, and this features a young boy, I think he is 9, or no, maybe he's 11, and his grandfather comes into town. His grandfather is estranged from the family, and some weird things start happening to the boy. And yeah, I hated this book. This is not a good book. I cannot recommend it, but if it sounds intriguing to you, it is very short. The next book pains me to say because it is my last buddy read with Leandra at Leandra the TBR0, and that is The Sundown Motel. This was a 2-star read. This features a girl, I cannot remember her name. It's a dual timeline. So you have Viv, who is the character who lives like in the past timeline, and then you have another girl who lives in the present timeline, and Viv has gone missing in the past along with some other women and at this specific hotel, and the present timeline is trying to figure out what happened to Viv, and in the past timeline you're seeing what is happening and what eventually happens to Viv. So the premise of this is amazing, and I really did enjoy the first part of the book. And without like spoiling what this book does and kind of how disappointing it was for me, this book does focus on, it has some supernatural elements, it has some true crime elements, and I feel like there were so many questions that didn't get answered throughout the story, or that got answered in a very non-organic way, which is what frustrated me about this book. But I wouldn't tell people not to read it, it just wasn't for me. Next is Something is Killing the Children. This is a 2.5 star from me, and this is a horror graphic novel. This is very, very gory, which is fine. That was not the reason I gave it the 2.5 star rating. It follows a woman who is a monster hunter, and there is a monster that is plaguing a town, and she comes in essentially telling people that they have to listen to her or everybody's gonna die. And this book was very dramatic, this graphic novel was written in a very dramatic way, in kind of like the old superhero ways where it's like, I'm gonna get you, and you're a bad person type of commentary that I really didn't enjoy. And I felt like there were pieces of the story that were glossed over. So not for me, but it was short and there are multiple editions out. So if you guys are interested in a horror graphic novel, maybe pick this one. Next, I have a whole slew of 3 stars. This is very typical for me for horror novels. There are certain things about horror that I am really particular about, I have found in my reading tastes. And so one of the first books that is a 3-star rating for me is Greymist. Greymist Fair. I looked down and I realized I switched the 2 words. I buddy read this with Nala over at Here There Be Stories, and this is a fairy tale. I don't want to call it a retell. Well, I guess it is a retelling, but it's a retelling of multiple fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm, and it's very episodic. I really liked certain aspects of it. There's a main storyline where you have these murders that are occurring, and you have this mystery in this town where there aren't a lot of people who travel in and out of the town. And you have a character that I really did enjoy that was called Dr. Death. And his storyline, whenever you do eventually get to his backstory, was super interesting. And the main character, the main girl that we follow, who originally discovers the original murders, her storyline was really interesting. But a lot of the, I don't know, like the subplot, I guess, or the different storylines that we followed were very sporadic. And there were a lot of unanswered questions. There were a lot of things that were left unexplored, which I didn't enjoy. Next, kind of on the same vein, is Small Spaces. So this I also rated 3 stars. And the reason I say it's in the same vein is Small Spaces is middle grade. It's a middle grade horror, and you follow a young girl who witnesses someone about to throw a book into a river, and she saves the book and reads the book, and the book is kind of about some creepy things that have happened in the past of her town, and then some things start happening that kind of align with the text of the book. And I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to continue with this. I definitely think that I'm just not the audience for this book. And so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I feel like because it was a middle grade, I was drawn out of the story by certain things, and I really wanted to love it, but I'm just kind of in the middle of the way. So I haven't decided if I'm going to give the second one a try. If you guys have read this series, I know a lot of people absolutely love it. I could absolutely be convinced in the comments. But yeah, I just thought it was okay. The next 3 stars is The Salt Grows Heavy. This is a really, really short book by Cassandra Khaw. And I think the reason I gave this a 3-star is because it's so short. I wanted more of the story. You follow this creature who is on land and really shouldn't be, and their backstory, and they, in their travels on land, they stumble across these children, and something is not quite right. And I really enjoyed the atmosphere of this book, and if you're squeamish about like body horror, I would not read this. That part I really enjoyed. I liked the darkness and the kind of bleak atmosphere, and also the hope in the character. I just wanted to know more. And that was kind of, this book left me wanting, was why I ended up rating it a 3-star. Because at the end of the book, I wanted more from the character. I wanted more from the character's backstory. I wanted more about what happened in the future. I just wanted more. So I didn't hate this book. I liked it. I wanted more of it. The next is a thriller called How Can I Help You? This was read at the very beginning of October, I think. I'm pretty sure it was October. I think this was my first read of October. This follows 2 librarians, and one of them, is kind of seeking out a different life for herself, and you figure out why throughout the story. The other is, I guess, kind of the same thing, starting over in a way, and there are some nefarious things that go down at the library, and one becomes suspicious of the other and starts digging into that person's past and finds some interesting things. So there's murder in this, there's the inner dialogue of the characters I really enjoyed, but this book, one of the things I really don't like about mystery thrillers that involve murders is you find out who the murderer is too soon. And that's all I'll say. I won't say who it is, but I don't like to know until probably, I would say I don't need to know until 80%. You can give me hints all you want, but I want uncertainty until 80% if that is part of the mystery or intrigue in a book, and this book did not give that to me. And so that was one of the main factors of this being a 3-star and not higher, was the fact that a lot of the suspense and tension was broken at that moment. I did really enjoy being in the 2 characters' heads and seeing their relationship and kind of the obsession with one another they have, I think was really fascinating to read about. But yeah, so there were parts of this I really loved. Parts of it I didn't. The next read was Mr. Magic, which is a 3.5 star for me. So Mr. Magic, you are figuring out, there is a show that was called Mr. Magic that no one talks about, and everyone remembers it, but there's no like evidence of it ever being online. Any like copies of the show have been destroyed. Any vlogs that talk about it have been banned and blocked. And so there's all this kind of mystery about Mr. Magic, and you get to follow some of the characters who were involved in Mr. Magic. And that's all I'll say, because I think that after that, it's kind of best to go in blind. I liked the suspense of this book and the kind of weird narrative that you follow with the main character and her life and how this show has impacted her and impacted those around her. The ending, I think, of this book was a little disappointing for me. I can't remember exactly why I rated it a 3.5. I know that the main character, Mr. Magic, was part of it because he doesn't play as big of a role as I think he should have in this book. But yeah, it's definitely what I would say to give a look if it sounds interesting to you. I have read several books by this author, and so I just keep picking up more and more because this is an author that can either go either way. I've read Hyde by Kiersten White and The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and I absolutely love The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and I absolutely hated Hyde. And then this one just kind of fell in the middle. So I think I will continue to pick up by Kiersten White because I really do enjoy the premises of her books. It just depends on the execution whether or not I absolutely love it. On to the 4-star reads. So one of those is The Locked Door, and this follows a girl whose father is a serial killer, and she is a doctor or surgeon. She's a surgeon, and some of her patients end up going missing and are killed in kind of the same way that her father killed their victims. And so you are following her through the process of these things happening, and you are trying to figure out whether or not she is a serial killer or something else is going on. I really did enjoy this book. I'm trying to think of why I didn't give it a 5-star. I think that there were just some aspects that didn't grip me as much as I felt like they should. But I really did like I don't want to call it an unreliable narrator, but like, I really liked the not knowing, like I don't know if, like, am I getting the full story or am I not getting the full story? I liked that component of this book. Next is The House of Salt and Sorrows. This was also a 4-star, and this is a YA horror, I believe, fantasy horror. And you follow a family of girls who, I think they had 8 children originally, or was it 12? It was a lot of children, and they were all girls, and they have started dying in succession. And they live in an island kingdom, and all of the girls have died in not suspicious circumstances, but it's odd that they're dying in succession, and there are definitely some things going on behind the scenes, and we're not quite sure why. And we follow one of the daughters, who is the second oldest at this point in time, these events happening, and her trying to solve the mystery of her sister's deaths. And I really enjoyed this. It's absolutely bonkers at the end of it, and what happens is absolutely crazy. This was by Erin Craig, who I read Small Favors, and I thought Small Favors was very atmospheric, which I really enjoyed, but it was super slow and didn't have the impact at the end that I really wanted, and this book absolutely did that. The atmosphere was there, and the ending was absolutely fantastic. The next book is Death in Her Hands, which was a recommendation by Michaela Reeds. And right, I guess I shouldn't even call this a recommendation. This was just a book she talked about on her channel, and I decided to give a chance. You follow Vesta, who is a 72-year-old woman, I believe, who's walking through the woods at her cabin, her cabin in an isolated wood, and she finds a letter on the ground, essentially telling her that there is a body buried there that they will never find the killer of, and whoever wrote the note didn't kill the person, is what the note says. And you follow Vesta's inner monologue for the entire book of what this note actually means and what the backstory is. So you are just following her thoughts of what could have happened and what might have happened and who in the neighborhood has been involved. And this book started out almost wholesome, like being in her head and just having her kind of think through this process of, you know, what had happened. And I shouldn't call it wholesome because it's a very gruesome topic, but I don't know. I really enjoyed the first piece. It pulled me in because I just really liked being in Vesta's head. And then the book gets more and more concerning as you go on, and it's very unhinged at the end. I really enjoyed it. I think I really want to reread it now, knowing kind of where the ending was. And yeah, I don't know. This book is very hard to describe, and it's definitely not a book I would recommend to people because I do think the majority of people are probably not going to like this book. And if you look at Goodreads, it's very apparent with the ratings that this book has. But I really enjoyed it, and I think I want to read more by this author. The next 4-star is Dead 11. This is a story that follows, I can't remember if it was an island. I think it's an island that is stuck in the past. And a woman who is dealing with grief and the loss of her son goes looking on this island for answers. And you follow her story through this island where something's just not quite right. This book was creepy. It was atmospheric. It was darker than I thought it was going to be. And I really enjoyed the 90s references in this book. I enjoyed kind of being taken back to the past and some events that happened then and what things looked like in the 90s and what people valued and things like that. I really enjoyed about this book. The last 4-star read is The Dead Take the A Train. So this is the book that I have displayed right up here. I thought this would be perfect backdrop for my horror reads. This is another Cassandra Khaw. It also is by Richard Kadri, who I haven't read before. I specifically picked this up because Cassandra Khaw, I really enjoyed the premise and the writing of the When the Salt Grows Heavy, but I wanted a longer book, and this is a longer book. This is about I'm not going to be able to remember her name, Julie. Julie is a down on her luck drug addict girl who lives in New York City and is just trying to make her way by doing a very dangerous job. And this story is grungy. It definitely has body horror, so definitely read trigger warnings before you pick up this book. You follow her in New York City, which has had a lot of really dangerous things happen, and there is like an underground that normal people are not aware of that Julie is privy to, and a very massive story of how people like Julie keep the city safe. And I really liked this book. It was very dark. It was darker than I was expecting, which I should have expected it from Cassandra Khaw, but I really liked it. So Julie, essentially in one of her escapades, she ends up pissing off a very dark force, and you kind of follow the repercussions of that throughout the book. I think that's all I want to give you. So it was very good. Once again, it was only 4 stars, so it's not a 5 for me yet. It is a series, and so it's going to continue, and I am really intrigued on where this world is going to go. The first 5-star I'm going to talk about, I don't know really belongs in this vlog or in this video, but I'm going to mention it anyway, and that is Thornhedge. So Thornhedge is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but is a dark retelling of Sleeping Beauty. And I've talked about it a lot on my channel, so I will post a couple of links for you guys as far as if you want more detail, but you follow a toad-shaped creature who is protecting a tower, and you don't know why, and you kind of follow them through the why and the history around it. It's really cute, but it does have a dark undertone. So if you're interested in something that's very, very light and cute with not... It doesn't go deep into the horror genre. I would say that this is a good read for you. Others on this list that you could pick up would be like Small Spaces or Greymist Fair. Those are very light reads as well. The next book I'll mention is more fantasy, but definitely has horror elements, and that is The Blacktongue Thief, which is this yellow book right here. This is a first in a series, and I think it's the only one that's published so far, but this book follows a main character who is a thief specifically who is indebted and kind of in some trouble, and he ends up taking a job that that pertains to someone who is in dealings with the goddess of death. And there are, in this storyline, it's a fantasy world, there are cannibalistic goblins and vengeful giants and just crazy things go on. There was a war between humans and goblins, and I mean, the reason I say that there are horror elements in this book made me cringe. And like, there are certain things that are on page that you read through that I've never read in a fantasy novel before that were so gruesome and like stomach turning. And maybe I'm just a wimp, but I think that this deserves to be on this list. If you are a fantasy reader and you just kind of like to dabble in horror, I think this would be a perfect read for you. And the last 5-star that I have finished reading is Mary. This book I've waited for a year to read because I wanted to read it in October, and it is absolutely fantastic. It did not disappoint. You follow a menopausal woman or premenopausal woman who is starting to see, when she looks at herself or when she looks at other women, she sees them decompose before her eyes. And she ends up going home to a town she has not been to in quite a while and is trying to figure out what is wrong with her, if there is anything wrong with her. She also has been dreaming or having visions of murders, these really dark murders, and then she finds out that they actually have happened or are currently happening, and so she starts wondering whether or not she is responsible, and I just absolutely love this. It was fantastic. It's super dark. It has some really good messages in it as well about not being comfortable with aging, and I absolutely love this. I want to reread it. It's fantastic. The last book I want to talk to you guys about, I'm assuming is going to be a 5-star, but it is my current read, but I absolutely had to mention it, and that is September House. So if you haven't heard this, where have you been? Because this book has been everywhere. You follow a woman named Margaret who lives in her house that her and her husband have bought that is definitely haunted, and she is refusing to leave because it's her house, it's her home. Nothing's going to kick her out, and she's just going to live with the consequences. And it is set in such a way, or it's read in such a way, or written in such a way that it's funny, but not, and also very gruesome. The characters that are in this book, the ghosts and the things that live in this house with her, have backstories that are so interesting, and the main character, I have liked being in her head. It is only one POV, so you just get to live with her through her experiences, but it's absolutely fantastic, and I can't imagine that it won't be a 5-star, but even if it's not a 5-star, it's definitely going to be a 4 or a 5. So if it sounds intriguing to you, if you like, I wouldn't call it light horror, I would call it quirky horror, and I think that if there are more books that are in this subgenre of horror, I need to look them up because I absolutely love it. So that is my list of horror and thriller recommendations for you guys for the last few days of spooky season. If you're looking for something else, if you've run out of reads, which I'm sure is not the case, I hope that you found one of these intriguing. If you have more, or a book that you have been really excited about this spooky season, please leave some recommendations in the comments down below. I would love to add to my list because I've had such a fun time exploring the horror genre. I am new to the genre, but I just wanted to dive in because I've really enjoyed my time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.